Future of Retail Asia with Jun and Imran, powered by Aimazing.
Hello, welcome back to the third episode of The Future of Retail Asia. I'm Imran.
And I'm Jun. Joining us today is Prantik Mazumdar, who is the currently Managing Director of Customer Experience Managing Group at dentsu International. Welcome, Prantik.
Thank you. Thank you guys for having me. Really looking forward to this conversation.
Thanks, Prantik. Prantik acts as a digital transformation catalyst in organizations to drive change, growth, and impact. Actually, he started his journey with Happy Marketer in 2011. He spent a decade scaling up the firm to be one of the most awarded independent digital marketing services firms today, before a successful exit to dentsu International, where he is currently still with. So he's also been a regular columnist since 2015 and recognized as one of the top 50 most influential marketers in the world. I could go on, but I think we'll stop here.
Fantastic, right? I think, Prantik, with your 10 years experience in marketing, right, I think this question will be best suited for you. So previous one of our guests actually asked this question, which is like, how different is retail marketing today compared to 5 years ago? So what is your thought on this?
Yeah, but I think, I would probably break that down. When you see the 5-year period, I think the last year and a half is probably worth a decade, right? In terms of change and transformation and even the life before that. And maybe let me start around 2015, 2016, and, in the context of Singapore or Southeast Asia, I think we started seeing a huge amount of demand and change from our retail clients and, people that I know in the retail industry to fundamentally start digitizing. Now, the word digital and digitizing has different meaning and connotations for, different people. Now, back then, I think what really digitizing meant is fundamentally, can I start accepting digital payments? Can I digitize my loyalty program? Can I even have digital kiosk ordering that you might have seen, inside a Coffee Bean, Tea Leaf, or a McDonald's?
Yeah.
So I think there was a digitization process, be it their menu, loyalty, payment, etc. At the same time, I think from a digital marketing, I think a lot of the marketing started becoming digital. 5 years ago, we had clients who said, hey, you know what? We want to open a Facebook page or a Twitter account to do customer service management. Or
the good old days.
We make our website a bit more e-commerce friendly, right? So 5 years ago, that was what the transformation of retail was all about. Digitizing and fundamental basics of setting up digital assets.
Yep.
But if you ask me, or if you just look around in the last year and a half, thanks to what the pandemic, has kind of done to our industries, I think fundamentally, the challenge or, the opportunity rather is, can I make my business omni-channel? Can I have a retail storefront?
Yeah.
Could be for trials, but can I deliver directly? Can I figure out, better customer service offline? At the same time, can I use, let's say, a channel like Zendesk to automate my digital customer experience, right?
Right.
So I think a lot is moving towards omni-channel transactions. A lot is moving around how do I better manage and personalize my customer experience. So I would kind of break the 5-year period into those two different blocks. And that's the sort of trends that I'm seeing with our clients or otherwise in the retail segment.
Awesome. That's like a history of digital marketing in 1 minute. And I was there too. It was amazing to watch, actually. And so in this changing market reality that you just described, right? What do you think? You can't have personalization. You can't have omni-channel without data, right? So like what do you think in the context, right? And I think there's another commonality, like for all of us here in the call today, that you do serve some of the property companies or mall management companies of the world or Asia, and so do we. And when it comes to this kind of physical marketplaces, so to speak, what kind of data do you think they should be looking at today, right? Like what should they be looking at to adopt into that data infrastructure so that they can embrace this omni-channel you just described?
Yeah, you're absolutely right that I think data is the core to any sort of transformation or any sort of personalization. In fact,
right.
A few years ago, The Economist kind of coined the term data is the new oil. But recently I've been reading about data is the new soil. where unless unless your trees are rooted in a solid soil footing, it's hard to kind of grow. Right?
Love that.
So you're absolutely right about
Yeah.
that. Now, I think when we speak of retail, we got to break it into, I think, the aggregated malls, the property owners, and of course the retail outlets, the brands who typically rent out spaces, right? So if I start with the brands and the outlets, I think there's been a lot of activity or a lot of chatting going on about two kinds of data points. For example, if I visit a outlet of mother care, right? The question is, what kind of data can they collect about me, right? And fundamentally, just like in the digital space, you can break the data points into two: anonymous and personal data, or what in the digital world is called PII, personally identifiable information, which allows you to identify me as an individual, right?
Yep.
Now, if anonymous data points that the likes of mother care, as an example, can typically collect is, a counter, who enters, who exits, or rather how many, not who, how many enter, you can kind of collect that.
Yep.
You can collect about the transaction volume for a day, right? So I think the scope of collecting anonymized data is already prevalent, and it's improving. For example, I know some fast fashion outlets, they typically have CCTV cameras and analytics software that kind of tracks which kind of people go into what aisle, what's the critical path to the checkout, without identifying me as an individual.
Right.
But they can probably make educated guesses about gender, race, age, so on and so forth, right?
Yes.
So I think anonymous, there's a lot of scope, and I think a lot of companies are kind of doing that. But I think where we'll see a movement is what happens. When can they kind of classify and identify me as Prantik, right? Of course, if I'm transacting as a loyal customer, they're going to do that. But even if I'm not a loyalty member, you could do that, right? You could.
Yeah.
There are like what the hotels do. Like if you give me some sort of a value exchange, like maybe if I'm accessing Wi-Fi in the store, maybe you would ask me for my PII information, and maybe I'll be okay, right?
Yep.
Or maybe even if I'm transacting using non-loyalty methods, you could still ask me for my information, and you can gather that potentially, right? That's a possibility. And of course, you've got to be very careful with that PII information because of privacy and PDPA laws, right?
Yep.
So I think that's at the mother care store level. Anonymous and personally identified information are two broad pockets. Now, I think what is the distinguishing factor for a mall is quite different, right? I'm entering a mall typically with an objective of either transacting at these outlets or maybe eating at one of the restaurants or cafes. The question is, what can the mall as an aggregator, as a marketplace equivalent collect, right? I think again, the anonymous data points that malls can and probably are collecting is again, right, entry, which aisle, which floor. I think that sort of data, aggregated data points are being collected. But I suspect as we move along, malls also, many of them are kind of looking at different business models. Like in the Philippines, when we did some work for some of the malls, I think one trend that we saw is they also wanted to figure out how can we collect first party information. So they would have, kiosks, they would have certain gaming corners, they would have certain entertainment parks where again, two things are happening. One is you're moving away from mall as a place where you come and transact to becoming a mall where you come and hang out and get entertained or get educated, and in return of that value exchange, you're revealing your personally identifiable information.
Right.
In Singapore, for example, CapitaLand and Capita program, they have their own loyalty program, right? They have their gamified system, and now that's a lot of value. At the same time, it allows you to collect information about not just my personal information in terms of demography, but also my behavior. Where do I like to shop? What are my eating preferences? So on and so forth. So I think we are at that cusp where retail outlets and malls are figuring out their data strategy. But I suspect this has to transform, quite aggressively because, as you rightly said, Imran, without malls collecting data points about customer cohorts, it'll be very hard for them to A, personalize, B, monetize it more effectively.
Yeah. Actually, you touched on so many things that we need to talk about. But let me try to take it a step at a time, right? So you talked about anonymous and identifiable data, and then you talked about how, as an aggregator, the physical marketplaces need to evolve. So actually, previously I was with an e-commerce marketplace, right? And I think you probably understand the amount of transactional and personal identifiable data that an online player would have. When we are talking about physical retail, physical aggregators or marketplaces, right? So, in your experience, has it been a challenge looking at this kind of data infrastructure? How do we get them to that same level?
Yes, I think if I look at the region, it has been uh, difficult. I think I'm seeing more brands probably being probably more open to collecting this or investing in that. I think malls have one more step to kind of go. I think, like I said, there needs to be that catalytic movement or aggregation. And I dare say the pandemic probably will accelerate that as well.
Yeah.
Because as physical footfall potentially drops, I hope it kind of comes back to the normal soon. But as shopping habits, consumption habits change, as more things get delivered home, I think malls will need to kind of make the most of whatever footfall that they get in.
Yeah.
And the only way to do that is to kind of collect data and make sense of it and activate and monetize that data. So to me, I think yes, it's a challenge. That's something that requires championing within the mall organizations. And I am seeing that a lot of the large property retail groups, which own a lot of mall commercial properties
Yeah.
across different regions, I think it might be easier for them because they can have a concentrated digital data strategy across different properties in the region.
That's
Maybe
right.
they can
Yep.
pick a few outlets, a few malls, and pilot.
Right.
But I think there is no two ways that they will have to begin this journey. Yes, it's difficult. It involves a lot of sensitivity. But let's face it, right? Various other offline businesses have, if you look at entertainment parks, right? If you look at amusement parks, if you look at museums, ultimately they're all physical businesses based that thrive on, footfall.
Yes.
And the way they are kind of customizing this as well, they're going through this transformation by collecting user data in a responsible, privacy friendly manner.
Yep.
And I think that's the direction malls are beginning to kind of take, and they have to, because as you rightly said, lot of lessons to be learned from the digital marketplaces, because if you have access to that data treasure chest, there's a lot of magic that can happen.
Yes. I think it's a very, very interesting topic, right? Because when we keep mentioning about like the data, like, oh, with this data, we can come up with this kind of analytics, this kind of insight, right? But the first place is actually we need to collect the data, right? So I think, just now I think bring up a very, very good point. Is like, I think that's also one of the reasons that actually for Aimazing, we came out with our solution to actually, we provide more visibilities for the retail transaction data. And the most important thing is actually without any integration to the POS system, and then we help the shopping mall to collect the data in the first place, right? Then, yeah. But so my question for you is actually like with this data, right? We just thought about like, okay, imagine we are able to collect the data, and then Aimazing is able to help the mall to collect the data, right? And then with this data, like how we can use the data to better understand the shopper journey in the mall, right? And then like how this data actually can be used for the CRM system and for the loyalty program.
No, firstly, it's amazing what you guys are doing, trying to kind of create this platform.
Thank you.
I guess
Thanks.
The closest analogy in my head is literally becoming the Google Analytics for equivalent for malls and property owners. I can already imagine so many use cases, but I think fundamentally, I think it's a function of value exchange, right? Now, if I'm a property owner and I have, let's say, 50 retail outlets, I think one of the biggest value that I can kind of give to my retail partners, who essentially are my tenants or who kind of pay me rent, is can I understand, like you rightly said, customer journey, and in this case physical journey, as to where do they enter, at what time, where are they walking. So I can easily, instead of treating every outlet space equal, I would easily know which outlets can potentially command higher footfall on which days, right?
Right.
So it allows me that ability to bring in dynamic rental yields. I could price my rental better as far as the mall is concerned.
Yes.
If I'm collecting my data, I could kind of you do a lot of personalized activation saying, hey, you know what, this particular Friday evening, I'm going to have a pop-up store on chocolates.
Yes.
If I know Imran and his wife love chocolates, they would get push notifications.
And we do,
or
yeah.
app or email. And hopefully he and the wife and the kids can, come down for a particular activation event, which hopefully can lead to, being channelized to particular retail outlets. So I think there is a lot of avenue for helping divert traffic to specific retail stores. Mall can play a bigger role in activating different audiences in a personalized manner to create better pull, right? Today, I don't see many malls do that today, right?
Yeah.
It's like I'm going to the mall, I go to Vivo City because I want to go watch a movie at GV, right? And then I might walk into a 7-Eleven before the movie. But if Vivo City, as an example, reached out to me saying, hey, you know what? There's a car show today, or there's an education fair today. Or by the way, this particular brand, the Havana brand, they're kind of giving out a discount this evening. I think as an aggregator, one of the value add to your tenants is, can I create attraction? Can I leverage the brand power that I'm building as a aggregate brand owner and drive traffic? Can I then divert the traffic? And more importantly, it's like if I suddenly have the power to look at the different pages in my website and see which is attracting traffic, and I can optimize, right? The whole game is optimization.
Yes.
Be it in terms of space, be it in terms of I might even get a very good understanding that, hey, maybe the chocolate concept that I spoke about isn't really working. Maybe my audience doesn't like chocolate. Maybe my audience loves wine. And then I might, maybe then I reach out to Jun Ting and your family, because if I know you're a wine lover, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's really about optimizing. As you rightly said, it starts with collecting and cleaning data, and then based on that, optimizing to kind of create that leverage and pull, which I can then translate as value to my retail partners, who are eventually my customers if I'm a mall owner.
That's amazing. Actually, this really brings to mind some of the capabilities that we were sharing with some of our partners, right? Imagine if we could even do like a live 11:11 show where we could spike the transactions at the peak hour. We could do voucher drops at the peak hour based on certain triggers of certain transactions in the mall. And this is only available if you have real-time transactional data. And so consider this a live pitch to you and anyone else listening right now. But I think this is really magical, right? So I think this next question, I think, is very much up the alley of everything we just discussed. And I think especially as your role as a digital prophet, if I may so say, right? What do you think this new omni-channel retail that you actually alluded to previously, right? What does that look like, right? Maybe for the business, maybe even for the customer. What will that magical future look like?
Yeah, if I look at again, I would always start with the customer cohort in mind, right? And what is a typical journey? Now, if you look at the retail science, the likes of the brands like P&G, etc., they had this whole concept called, moments of truth. And it had a very 3 simple step process that I shall create awareness about my brand. Let's say a soap, people see hoardings and billboards, they get attracted or they probably get intrigued. They come to the outlet, they buy the soap, go home, try it, and hopefully they come back, right? But I think that journey is no more linear. It's a circular loyalty loop, right? And also what's happened is between creating awareness, be it through marketing, advertising, to purchase, there's also an interesting step called the evaluation process or the discovery process, right? Now, if you ask each other, how do we get to know about a particular brand? Either there is push advertising, print, radio, digital, or there is passive discovery through word of mouth, social media, live streaming, etc., right? So I think we need to understand that customer journey is right from finding out about a brand or a particular concept to actively evaluating, comparing, to actually going down to buying. And by the way, the problem is a lot of retailers tend to think it stops there. Prantik came and bought the mother care product, that's it. Not true. You ideally want to convert Prantik into a recurring revenue, into a regular buyer as a loyal customer. And if not even better, can you convert Prantik into a brand ambassador or an advocate?
Right.
So that Prantik can tell his friends and more people come in, because we know that acquiring customers is the biggest hassle.
Yes.
And hence, can I reduce my customer acquisition cost through organic referrals, right?
Yeah.
So I think the omni-channel outlets, right? Or rather, especially, so, in the world of retail, if you have the digital natives, I think they are digital first. So I think for them, the use cases, can I add on offline space, either as warehousing, either as a lost and found, or either as a trial room, right? The use cases, like how you've seen probably Zalora do that, right? Especially in Orchard, you have a small little outlet for trials, returning, etc.
Yep.
But if someone is going the other way around, from pure offline to digital, I think the use cases for them is massive, because when you think of omni-channel, digital could help. Digital storefront, whether your own brand.com or a shop in shop on a Lazada, Shopee, it'll help you on the discovery journey, right? That's one. Maybe you will be partnering with influencers, or maybe you'll be doing some live streaming, which has become so popular.
Yeah.
Or maybe you'll have an affiliate network for social commerce, right? All of this, not only adds to a revenue stream, but also it allows you to reach out to markets at scale on steroids, which just by being in a mall alone wasn't going to help you, right? So I think for people moving to digital, I think the power of digital to kind of help you do personalized, targeted marketing to create the right kind of discovery and awareness is very powerful. The other side is, of course, the whole digital CRM and loyalty piece. I think a lot of retail customers are still trying to figure this process out, and that's where we try to work with them to help them understand that, look, one of the biggest fallacies or difficulties or challenges of offline is, let's say 100 people come to your store, chances are maybe 5 will buy. But what about the remaining 95 who touch and feel your product and go away? If you don't collect that data, you will never know who they are or why did they not buy, right? So you need to figure out digital mechanisms of collecting some aggregate data about who are the non-buyers. How can I, so to speak, retarget them offline or digital and bring them back?
Absolutely.
Right? So I think it's both at the top of the funnel and at the loyalty part of the funnel where digital has a huge use case.
Wow, really, really interesting. Very, very insightful for us. Yeah. But actually, Prantik have a very interesting background, right? So beside an entrepreneur and then like expert in the marketing industry, I know that you are also a venture investor, right? So just like I want to check with you, like, are there any proposal for like disruptive technology in the retail sector that actually has catch your attention?
Yeah, so to be honest, I had seen, and I must put this into context, right? So when as a potential investor, it's a large gamut of investment opportunities that I see, right? Now, I must be honest that there are some that are extremely futuristic, or what in Singapore we typically look at deep tech opportunities, right? So they may be producing clean hydrogen, or they may be about specific use cases of blockchain related identification, right? So, and on the other side, you might see fintech, insurtech. In the retail tech, what it may seem that the technology or the use cases are not very futuristic or not very fascinating in a relative scale. But I just think what I'm noticing is that whatever that's coming out it's very realistic. The applications are near real time, and there is if customers start adopting and start using them, the value could start coming in the next 2 to 3 months, just like the way you guys are doing, right? So there was one where I saw that I think their use case was around, again, retail CRM, right? Or their one use case was about just for F&B outlets, as simple as how can I digitize. They've created a platform. So there's one I'll happily share. Now, this is again not for their first use case is hawker centers. Now, you might have heard of this Singapore brand called YQ, right? So they are basically into digitizing SMEs in Singapore, Malaysia, starting with hawker centers, right? Even they are physical retail outlets. And again, typically in Singapore, you would appreciate that they're generally not very tech savvy. So these guys have created a very nice, seamless platform which allows the hawker center aunties and uncles to aggregate demand and deliver food, right? Which is something they couldn't do, right? Because they can't afford the commission rates that some of the other apps charge. So YQ does this beautifully. They provide them with the POS terminals. They provide them with the mechanism to kind of showcase their menu, get demand. And there's a delivery person who aggregates demand and delivers. On the other side, they are also helping them optimize the supply chain, because each, whether you're selling chicken rice or char kway teow or whatever, you still need raw materials. So again, on the other side, they are providing a tech platform for them to procure goods from your Shengxiong's or NTUC FairPrice at scale, right? So again, it's a very simple aggregated tech play for a industry that is, that needs a lot of digitization and automation. So it's good to see that, right? So that's one example that kind of came to mind. The other one is, again, maybe a bit more futuristic and sci-fi, is robotic use cases in malls, in again, it could be in food courts or restaurants, is in terms of serving, right? So I think I've seen this in hotels. So there are a few startups that I'm kind of seeing here, be it Sesto, be it BotSync. They basically created wonderful automated robots which basically carry goods, right? So assuming your store, you can't have too many people because of the pandemic or because of maybe regulation or because of cost. So these robots basically can be programmed to beautifully, efficiently carry goods from one place to the other,
Right.
In an efficient manner. And of course, many of them have added a personalized touch in terms of music, voice, all of that. So I think these two are, that I'm kind of partners and investors at. But I've also looked at, like the one I mentioned, the example where they are helping you track the in-store analytics or in-aisle analytics of who is spending how much time at what aisle, at what is their eye level, right? What kind of which aisle or which product are they looking at? And I think that real-time analytics has been very useful, not just to the retail outlet, but to the brand that's selling as well. That, okay, in classic shopper marketing, you would want to wonder which aisle do I place? How much premium do I pay for getting aisle A versus aisle B, right? So I think these sort of analytics, which is aggregated, non-PII, I've seen a couple of solutions there as well. Barring, like I said, the usuals of retail payment, digitizing payment, or retail CRM, which has been in vogue as well.
That's fascinating. So, in bringing these new technologies to the market, right? I think your role as a catalyst, I think, says it all, right? You're working with a lot of large companies. They're facing a lot of change. There's a lot of considerations, people, processes, systems. How do you think these disruptive tech companies should be thinking around going to market? Should they, for example, go and work with a dentsu like you guys, right? Like, is that the way that we should go to market, right? Like, how was your advice to these kind of companies?
Yeah, always happy to, as dentsu, always happy to work with some of these, future-facing product companies. But, I think if I am one of these companies, I think the first thing I need to acknowledge and tell myself, and something that a lot of these tech startups probably don't see, is, technology is not the answer. Technology is part of the answer, right? So if I'm sitting in the middle as a systems integrator or an agency, I see the malls and the retail outlets. I think that a lot of the tech solutions have been there. But I think when we look at, working with the malls or the retail outlets, the framework that we use is essentially, there are a few components that are critical to the success of any such transformation project, right? And I'll put people first. People, process, then technology. So there's this PPT framework that we kind of try and kind of talk to our customers about, is who in your company is going to be the champion? Do you have the right people to then thereafter implement and manage this, whether in-house or through a SI or an agency partner? So I think the people and the orchestration of people in teams, in hybrid or in-house or as outsourced partners, I think that's very critical. Awesome. The next is, in terms of processes, I think it's very critical to figure out, what are my goals? What are the KPIs, right? What are the processes and SLEs, right? So those people need to be kind of made aware of the process of how do you kind of leverage this technology. And the third is the tech stack, right? I think also what the malls and the retail outlets, where we come in, as when I say we as a dentsu or any such agency or SI partner, is to kind of advise them also on the tech stack. It's not just one piece of tech that will suddenly create magic, right? Yeah, the new tech has to work with legacy systems. You might need few other technologies in your stack, right? So if you need a data stack, you need an analytics stack, maybe a data visualization tool, a data orchestration tool, right? And I think that's where a role of a partner, whether it's an SI or an agency, comes in. And I think to the tech startups that I work with, I think it's very important for them to be cognizant. They are new, they're probably great at technology, and that's their core. I would definitely say that sure, you can always try working directly with the malls as long as you have the relationship and the brand and the credibility. But maybe given the early stages, one might be better off working with some partner because A, the partner probably has been long in the game, has sticky relationships. B, the partner probably has more consultative power to advise because the partner may have been working with the mall or the retail brand for a while. And anyway, the partner needs to integrate the different pieces, right?
Yep.
And as a young startup, you may not have the resources to take all of the sales, marketing, and account management elements into your P&L. Maybe initially you should focus only on the product roadmap and usage and customer service, right? So some of the companies that I have been speaking to, I think they're doing that, right? Unless you're B2C. If you're B2B, I think in most cases helps to go with some sort of expert partner.
Great. I think
Wise answer.
Yeah. I think, so I think we will be closing this episode, right, with some of the questions that we always like to ask. So what would be one advice to both mall manager and retailer?
I think my advice to any physical offline business, retail or mall, is I would say give me a chance to say two. One is, of course, I think be obsessed about data, not just about collecting data for the sake of it, but data to collect, clean, activate, and monetize. I think without that, it's going to be a checkered or a difficult future, right? So that's one, right? Second is about look at business models. I think for maybe centuries, if not more, the retail business has been about transaction. I want something, I go to a shop, I buy, I come out. But I think a lesson to be learned from the digital world is maybe there is an opportunity to reframe that into a subscription recurring revenue business. And to transaction should be a byproduct. Maybe, for example, I've been in some markets, Toys R Us, for example, they're looking at, hey, can I turn this into an entertainment center where kids or parents come, or parents idly come and drop the kids and pay me a subscription fee, just like an entertainment center.
Right.
Suddenly what's happening, your use case is changing. You are still transacting, you're making revenue, but it's not transaction led, it's transaction plus subscription.
Right.
But more than this money, I think it's the engagement model. The use case is no more just transaction. I think retail businesses and malls, especially malls, there's so much space, in the middle corridors, in the aisles, is how can I figure out entertainment and education or edutainment opportunities to draw crowds, to create a recurring model, right? To create that pull. So these 2 points is what I would, at a broad high level, suggest to any offline business, is to reframe the business model from transaction to something else and be obsessed about the whole data play to try and make your business omni-channel and to drive personalization across omni-channel.
Nice. And the last question from me is, do you think that physical retail is still king, and why?
I think physical retail is very, very relevant because, I think, again, it depends on which category, etc. The reality is, a lot of your generic FMCG goods, etc., I think the digital storefronts have done a fantastic job, right? I don't think I've stepped out too much to grocery stores because, Red Mart, Lazada, they've done such a fair price. They are doing such a fabulous job. But I think there are categories like, whether it's, let's say, a learning center, whether it's a museum, whether it's luxury goods, right? I think there are certain categories. Again, can it not happen offline? Of course, today people are buying cars and houses online, right? So everything can happen online. And hence, I think the softer element, the physical touch, the physical experience of trying something, test driving something, or entering a store just to enjoy maybe the smell, maybe the sight, right? I think some of us may have seen recently on Facebook or LinkedIn the new Zara outlet where they have used wonderful design to make the whole experience as though you're going to a concert, right? So I think so retail physical is still extremely critical, and I think it should continue to have its place in society as long as the model shifts, because it needs to cater to the new mindset that there has to be engagement driven, which is a function of entertainment, which is a function of some sort of pleasure beyond just transacting.
Awesome.
Thank you, Prantik. I think that's all the time we have for today, right? So once again, thank you, Prantik, for talking to us.
Yep, thanks, Prantik. For our listeners, feel free to drop a question, comment. Even if you want to address it to Prantik, we'll make sure that he gets those questions and comments. Do that on our Aimazing LinkedIn. You can follow us there or listen to the podcast on Spotify. With that, thank you again, Prantik, and stay tuned, guys, for the next episode. Cheers.
Thank you so much, Jun Ting. Thanks, Imran and the team for inviting me and to be part of the future of Retail Asia. It's amazing to see what you guys are working on, and hopefully very soon the adoption skyrockets. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prantik.
How will retail change post-pandemic? Download the Future of Retail white paper from our website, aimazing.co.